Hi, I'm Mark Gibbs with the Great Outdoors Nursery in Austin, Texas. And this time of year, we're coming out of these great spring rains. Everything is flushing like crazy. And we've got the little buggies moving through town. So we've already seen aphids, we've seen whitefly, we've seen thrips. A lot of times some of these big fronts will blow them on through, and hopefully another front will come and take them the rest of the way out of town. But if you get stuck with an infestation, one of the things you can do to help prepare and stay ahead of the game throughout the summer is to do some preventative treatments. And it's almost like, you sit next to the guy on the plane who's got a cold and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm gonna get sick. Well, you start taking vitamins and you do some sort of buffering on your own to help your immune system stay up. So there are ways, and I just call it preventative because you can start earlier in the season, you could start now, but the trick with preventative treatments are being diligent. You've got to remember, as soon as we get a rain or a heavy fog cycle, you're going to want to go reapply again as soon as possible. Even if it's within that window of time, most of these guys will tell you 10 days, 2 weeks, reapply again. But if you've just applied it and we get a really heavy rainstorm, you need to go ahead and apply again. This buffering is going to be what keeps the insects, drives them away. And if you do have any populations trying to show up, the earlier you catch them, the better off you're going to be. It also helps you stay aware of what's going on in your garden. You may have insects there that weren't there one day, and you go out the next day and poof, you've got a little show of aphids, or you've got a little show of mealy or something like that showing up. You can use beneficial insects to try to also control these: ladybugs, lacewings, praying mantids, things like that. But you're not going to be spraying if you do that because you'll harm your beneficial insects. So you kind of need to choose which path you want to go on and then be consistent with it. That diligence and consistency is what's going to be the payoff. So one of the things I want to point out up front is there is a really cool organic out here. It's pronounced differently by many folks. I call it Previsin. And this is a garlic, and it's got some soybean oil, some capsicum in it. So you dilute this and you spray it on your plants on a regular basis. These are wonderful irritants. So when those little buggers show up and they want to come in and start munching on stuff or infecting it, this is something that will buffer the plant and help drive them away. So if you get a head start with this on your young plantings out there, they will begin to get that into their cuticle over a period of time, and it's going to hold even longer and not wash off as often as you might get on some sort of liquid treatment with soapy spray. So I want to mention that because that's a great way on anything to get ahead of the cycle. Then when you look at all the different soaps and spray soaps out there, what you want to do is look at these labels in here. This one has some potassium salt fatty acids and some sulfur. So it's going to cover insects and fungal issues if you want to stay ahead of the curve on that. And then you may get into another variety that's more for vegetables and tomatoes, things like that. It's got pyrethrins, and then it's got the potassium salts and fatty acids. But when you look at the ratios, that's where you see the difference. In this guy, you've got 1% of the dilution on the potassium salt fatty acid. Over here, you've only got 0.75%. So pay attention to those labels and the strengths of what they've put into the system of the spray so you know what the concentrations are when you're doing that spraying. Another great way to do it is do your sprays in the evenings towards sunset. That lets the chemical have a night to sleep on the plants. It catches the insects when they're slowing down and they're nesting up for the night. You'll have a better capture. And then I also call it sort of the bullseyeing. If you have plants that may have gotten infected already, spray the stuff that's not infected first. So when you go to treat the ones that may be harmed already, you don't get a flight situation where they go to something that's clean. You want to trap them. So you want to corral them up and not give them a chance to spread when they do want to flight, okay? So again, there are just so many different types of sprays. This one is great for house plants if you've got situations there. And again, this is a 2% potassium salt fatty acid dilution. A good old-fashioned thing you can do out with roses or any of your tender perennials, you can put the sticky traps out there. This is a great way to detect whether something's trying to move in. If you see these traps starting to fill up, you'll know something's moving through, and you can be ahead of the curve on awareness. So these are great to use for that. On the disease side, we've been super rainy. So preventative wise, you want to clean up any disease debris, okay? Roses that are dropping black spot foliage, brown patch and turf areas. Those leaves need to be cleared out. If you've got that on hawthorns, any other red tips, things like that, getting that debris out of there really brings up your chances of controlling the disease issue because you're not getting splashback on those plants. So maintenance is part of a preventative regime. And even if you've got a plant that's infected severely, trimming off some of those portions that are the worst infected and getting rid of that immediately is going to do an amazing amount of control on the insects, or even if it's disease. There are dusts that you can dust with, which will help take care of the caterpillars that are coming around that may be working on vegetables, especially your squash borers, things like that. Anything that's getting on your leafy crops. These are really safe to use. They take a little time to work because the insects have to ingest it before they die off. So you do want to have a little patience. You may see a fraction more damage going on before you see control. But that regular dusting is going to be something that will tamp down those populations and knock them out a lot faster if you're ahead of the game. And then I do want to talk about some beneficial plants that you can put in there. These are our old school type plantings that have been done for hundreds and thousands of years, where you can use, you know, certain annuals or herbs to interplant into those beds, and the elements that are in the herbs or the annuals, the oils in those will typically push away certain insect species. So just interplanting with those can be complementary. Geraniums are great for that. Lots of different mints are great to use in situations like that. Marigolds are an old school one. And in a strange way, some of these guys attract some insects, pull them away from your population of good stuff, and then they host kind of the bad guys. So it's kind of counterintuitive to put something in there that may attract something bad, but it'll keep them away from other stuff that might be susceptible. Rosemary is a wonderful one to put out there. Sage is a stunning one to put out there, and that's on the culinary side. We do have a wonderful article from Ricky Wilson. We had this in with our herb seed display, and it goes through a wonderful alphabetical regime of different herbs that you can interplant with that take care of more than just aphids and mealybugs and things like that. They can help you get rid of fleas, they can help you get rid of house flies and kind of ward them off, things like that. So definitely take a look at this article. It's Ricky Wilson again. She lives out in California and does really great articles on interplanting like that. And we do have it inside. Look that up or get some pictures of it in the gift shop. And just remember, staying ahead of the curve is part of the battle. Once you're ahead of the curve, you don't have those issues and you're not behind when something creeps in. Again, it's really interesting to see when things are coming through town. And right now, thrips are a tad early. So if you're in the Austin area, start watching out for those. We have seen people bringing in leaves already affected. So if you have any questions on the right type of spray for the right type of plants, or you need some powders or some dusting materials for any of the fungus problems or any of the worm problems, let us know. We'd be glad to point you in the right direction and even help you find some pretty bouquets to put out there in the garden so you get the payoff of the flowers or the nice scent of the herbs and the reuse of the herbs in your plantings. If you have any questions, please let us know.